Friday, so
Huh?
you always be done by Friday.
Anya, I'm happy to see you remotely.
Thank you. Good to see you all too.
Alright,
I know we hit 7 or.
Yeah.
I would like to wait for Rebecca.
Oh, yeah.
To return. But we can, I guess, well, we'll just sit. That's best. Hi, everybody.
Our speech.
don't need member quiz, sorry. And whereas this is workshopping, we have 4, I think that's sufficient anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's a quorum, right? Is it, yeah, so you can convene.
I don't have a gavel, so.
That's what happens.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you all for coming to this special workshop session of workshop session. I'm never gonna get that right. Of the Historic Preservation Commission. We are going to have an abbreviated kind of agenda. I will fortunately not have to run through my standard boilerplate of how we open our meetings because we're not doing any of those things. So the purpose of this session is to review possible changes to the Historic Preservation Code. That is all that we are specifically looking to do today. If we come out of this with a solid recommendation, we want to put before, well, we can take a formal vote with the commission and then offer to send that to the council. We can do that, but I'm not expecting that to necessarily come out of tonight. I hope this kicks off the conversation. We'll have some good notes, and some good working things to take from, and then we can perhaps drive it in regular sessions as an adjunct. With that being said, this is, I would like to say, a round table kind of setup. So in the interest of saving time later, I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves as we go around so that we already have that on the record. And then we can talk. I will attempt to guide the discussion. Remember, if anybody feels the need to scream obscenities or assault somebody, please leave the room. Take it outside. Old schoolyard, thank you. But that being said, I am Edmund Sheresky, and I'm the chair of the commission for this year, and we'll end with you. We'll go this way around the table.
Nathaniel Kennedy.
Matt, you should.
I'm Matt Altiero, planning analyst for the city. It's gonna be Stephen Freeze. Rick Violet.
And Greg, Director of Community and Economic Development.
Dr. Peter Cummings, I live at 10 West Broadway. Stephen Barron, 198 Broadway.
Thank you, Broadway.
I'm not saying where I'm living.
Is it Broadway?
Rebecca.
Thank you, everyone. So that being said, to offer at least some initial structure, we have we have many supporting materials today. We have some recommendations for specific code changes provided by Rick, who I assume is still representing everyone.
Well,
More or less.
the group that put this together was Steve, Carl, me, and Dan Wellington, former code enforcement officer, who actually helped write this version.
Appreciate it.
All that.
Thank you.
So, much of the input was from Dan, who was up at the university tonight, couldn't be here.
It wasn't intended to put you on the spot, just you with the name on the letter, so I just want to make sure I have it clear. And then we have also recommendations from the city as far as things we could possibly talk about. Again, just in the interest of having that out there, I'm gonna start with the city's recommendations, and we can either choose to go with those, we can have an open conversation, we can talk about the proposed adjustments to the code that was directly given to us. It is, as long as we're polite and fair to each other, it's an open conversation. But that's what I'm supposed to enforce, is the polite and fair and summarize. So the city planning staff has some general thoughts that we can discuss as part of our conversation tonight. We could add a provision for emergencies and a minor revision approval, meaning as and a point of clarification, add provisions for emergencies as a minor revision approval process.
Yeah, you know, that if there was an emergency situation, fire, whatever, natural disaster, and that staff would be able to, work with the order to, so they can make the necessary.
And of course, we need to define emergencies if that is something we are interested in doing. Also guidelines for new construction, they reference Portland and Yarmouth. If we want to talk about that, I will ask you to speak about what you know as far as what Portland is doing. Sure. Add flexibility for substitute materials. Possible standard C changes, in the event that replacement is necessary, the new material should match the material being replaced in stripe composition, emphasize color, design, texture, and other visual qualities, and where feasible materials, removing the words composition and finish. Standard D, where economically and technically feasible, could use a definition. lengthen the expiration approval time period for HPC permits. Clearer language for solar installations, generators and heat pumps in historic districts. Guidance for using vinyl windows, possibly increasing the ability for staff to review minor changes such as changing awning fabric and making changes that aren't visible from a street, as well as allowing for larger signage for second floor retail in the downtown development district. Clarify that replacing to match doesn't require a permit. Removal of awnings, possibly make that a minor revision. Include illustrations in the code. Possibly seek grant funding for this to make the code easier to understand for lay people. Should there be a stop work order powers for historic violations? And possibly change the certificate of appropriateness requirements for 3 members voting and only majority to, or I should say, to only require 3 members in a majority vote and not 4 positive.
Correct.
That being said, I'm gonna reference the camp training that we went through this summer, and some of the guidance that's for the seminar that Nate and I at least attended, and I know Matt, you were there as well, and Ann, you were there as well.
Yeah.
Over the summer was that from a lot of historic preservation commissions are facing, I don't want to say exactly the same problems, but sorry, said we see it face some of the same problems or challenges and struggles, and a lot of them are reviewing their code for the purposes of updating, and specifically here, the guidance for this is they've gotten feedback from the community that they've worked with and relevant government agencies that are involved here is you do need to stay aligned with state law. That is a requirement for what we do. We should streamline, clarify language, and reflect our current practices, which I think were good representations of some of the struggles that we have had as a commission, and I'm certain some of the community has felt as well. That being said, would we like, as a general, anybody want to weigh in on whether you just want to talk or do you want to kind of go down through the city's recommendations? Would you like to talk about your provisions? Not Rick, I've added because you brought it to us. I have no objection to like kind of approaching that specifically, but I kind of want to have a feel of what people are struggling with or what we're looking for first, if that makes sense.
Well, I think our recommendations in large part are very similar to some of the things that staff has suggested.
Yeah.
And I don't know when you got,
It was included as part of our packet.
okay,
Okay.
did you get the ones that include the red?
Yeah.
Well, okay, because we.
No, we sent those right away.
Yeah, great, we met again, revised them, and again, I think that's consistent with some of the recommendations that Ann is making as well. So, we're,
I assume you've already read it, but if you want to review. Well, in the interest, I guess, of just kind of kicking some stuff off, let's start, if everyone is amenable, with some of the city's recommendations. I will attempt to take notes as we go, and if it pertains specifically to some of the concerns that you have addressed, then we can reference that at that time and include it. Of course, welcome everybody anyway. Also, Anya, I neglected to have you introduce yourself, but of course, I do know that you're there, so you can speak up whenever you feel you need to, as you are as much a part of the room as anyone else.
Okay, thank you.
If I'm not paying attention to you, just wave frantically and Matt will catch you.
Okay.
So the first part that the city had recommended was, or the planning staff, I shouldn't say the city, had suggested was that we should add a provision for emergencies as a minor revision for approval. We need to define emergencies. Is that a lack or a gap that we would like to talk about, address?
As far as defining emergencies, we can look at 36 CFR 800.12, which is section 106 part of the National Historic Preservation Act. That is the specific subsection of the act that deals with emergency procedures related to section 106. So that's your federal component for like your federal to state, federal to tribal government. But it does have a thing in there talking about local government's responsibility under 106 in emergency situations. So that would be a good place maybe for us to start from.
Would you like to give us a too long didn't read?
Too long didn't read. Go see 36 CFR 800.1. Emergency situations.
Give me the numbers again, please.
36 CFR 800.12.
Thank you.
title of emergency
Do
situation.
that mention maybe what they consider an emergency situation?
Yeah, so it's applicability, so 36, so 800.12D, it's applicability, I'll read verbatim.
Thank you.
This section applies only to undertakings that will be implemented within 30 days after the disaster or emergency has been formally declared by the appropriate authority. The agency may request an extension to the period of applicability from council prior, so that's the advisory council on historic preservation. Prior to the expiration of the 30 days, immediate rescue and salvage operations conducted to preserve life or property are exempt from the provisions of section 106 in this part. So that's your federal level. The state will have their own level of that, and then us as a municipality should have our own level that keeps in line with the two above us. But that's just a good starting point, because that's gonna, cause that tells you, especially the part where salvage and efforts to preserve life take priority. So, you know, if
Right.
somebody's house is on fire, we're not gonna say, whoa, 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 don't put that
We
fire.
didn't
department out.
approve putting that.
We didn't approve, you could put a ladder, you know, through that place window.
Historically, this home was supposed to catch on fire.
So it talks about, emergency declared by the appropriate authority.
So the governor or, I guess if there's a national disaster.
I would just say, I think we can all agree it would be useful to have an emergency provision.
Mhm.
And we need to work on the language and figure out where would it go, and then we can come back and talk about it again.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that's an easy one, right?
Yeah,
That makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I just wanted to give us a start.
Yeah, that's great.
Are there any, and this is, I guess, more specific for the commission, though, of course, anybody can weigh in. Having that codified as a minor revision just means that the only person who has oversight of that from a commission perspective is the chair, or in their absence, the vice chair, or the most senior person on the commission, if the vice chair is also on. That's because that's how our minor revisions are structured. If we're okay with that, as the four members of the commission here tonight, then we can of course proceed with that and say, hey, yeah, let's define emergency, and we can move it as part of the recommendation. Like, I'm not the lawyer, I don't have to have the
Right.
exact formulation of how this goes.
right, cause we'll take whatever, you know, you have agreement on and write up something for you to react to.
Right.
I just wonder if we're talking about a declared emergency, you know, God forbid, city of Bangor floods. Right, and it's a declared emergency from the governor. Do we even wanna waste time in trying to get in contact with the chair? If it's a declared emergency,
That's a different level.
I mean, it's a different level.
Yeah,
But like, is that gonna be thinking about things have to be done in time's critical?
right,
Is that gonna be,
You would have to define language, like what kind of emergencies constitute even the need in the
Yes.
first place, and
Right.
then just recommend that if it's a minor revision, it doesn't go to the
cause
commission.
I can understand if, you know, Snuffy Smith's house burned down, because left toast wrong, okay, so now there's kind of an emergency with that. Versus this is a declared disaster, natural emergency or whatever.
Well, that was my point in asking about the appropriate authority, because. Yeah, if we have an ice storm that the state governor, the city manager, the mayor has declared an emergency, that's one thing. But it's also an emergency if my house burns or Steve's house
Yeah.
burns, and nobody's gonna declare that in any formal way, so I think
Yeah.
that's
It's an
something.
important distinction.
You need some clarification as to whether it applies in those situations.
If we are generally in favor of having this as an addendum or a revision of the code, then we can, I think, move off of this specific point and say, yes, we'd love to see some language on that.
And
Okay.
into the.
Yeah, exactly.
That would need a more formal than a workshop. I think we'll go with that.
I mean, things that come to the commission, I think would typically become a post-emergency.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In the moment of the crisis,
I'm
we are
anticipating
not
a flood,
frontline.
so I want to.
Yeah.
Okay. The next recommendation from the planning staff was guidelines for new construction referencing Portland and Yarmouth. Nate, I know were waxing a little bit about Portland's visual guides, so I think
Yeah.
this also kind of ties in with another point they brought up. But
shouldn't bring it up on screen, I guess we're able to.
it's okay, we can talk about it.
So City of Portland is putting together sort of looks like a packet or like a infographic thing that landowners, homeowners, property owners in Portland can have where not only does it have a nice flow chart, talks about their historic preservation process, how to get through the process. But it shows photographic examples of different historic features.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, it shows different, different historic features, like if they're talking about this type of window, it shows what it looks like.
Right.
It showed.
The column had, it showed the stairs, like
Mhm.
before and after, yeah.
Yeah, and it talks about like, these are contributing properties. This is a non-contributing property, just an example of a gas station within the district. And it goes kind of point by point through all the historic preservation stuff. Gives great photographic examples. It has points of contact. It has all sorts of great information that you can get the landowners, homeowners, whatever owners could have to visually be able to say, oh, so when they're talking about this is what they mean. And it talks about examples of like materials, of similar materials. When do you want to replace with like, or when do you want to replace in kind? It covers all of those sorts of things in very plain language, easy to kind of digest.
So when I was reviewing our packet or our materials for tonight, one of the things that like pops out for me with Bangor code was on 148. I think it's on -6, but under H, the Historic Preservation Commission may, subject to appropriation, I'm gonna move back, that was the important part. The commission shall advise and assist owners of designated structures and historic sites with plans and assistance in complying with the requirements of our historic preservation code. And what you were describing from Portland and what kind of the Summit staff recommend, that sounds like something that fits in with that requirement or expectation of Bangor code. Like we should be, and we've expressed frustrations, I think, as a commission, and not related to Slate Root specifically, but in other sessions where we didn't have, we felt, resources to be able to like provide advice or direction, except through like some, like Mike had like stepped in a couple times and has provided advice and direction for people, but nothing that was written and easily accessible without coming to the commission. And then at that point, you're already in a certificate of appropriateness at that point.
Clock is ticking.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, well, best part too is Portland's already done a lot of work on this, so it's something that I have no shame saying, you just take and adjust for Bangor, run it through the appropriate channels, run it through the city's appropriate channels, make sure it's something that can fit for Bangor. But this could then be a very handy tool for the homeowners. Then we've talked about realtors not, necessarily informing, potential home buyers that, oh, your home's in a historic district. You can include maps that say these are the historic districts and things like that can be put in there, which I think would be really handy to have.
And the Portland and Yarmouth were mentioned as examples in the packet, but there wasn't a link to actually see the document.
Oh, yeah, I can
So
send
maybe
it.
if we had that, that'd be helpful.
It's pretty easy to find on Portland's website too.
Yeah,
Guidelines for new construction is useful. I mean, we haven't had a completely new construction in front of us. We had the one proposal and it went nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, those guidelines also, I think, are helpful. Even when you're doing modifications and not entirely new construction, I think some of the stuff in there is useful to that end.
So 148-9, subsection C, subsection 2 is the existing new construction guidelines. And so the city staff is suggesting it to be amended.
What is, as far as like new construction, what do you,
So a new
What are
building
those
in a historic.
so there's a
district.
vacant piece of land.
Right.
And
So
then
how will
what are
it integrate with the neighborhood
Sure.
or not?
I mean, and I dealt with that with not dealt with it. I purchased a piece of property from the city just off of West Broadway. That was not in historic district, but through it had to be, my bid had to be approved by the planning board, that it still just fit in with the neighborhood. That it looked like, yes, it was gonna look newer, but was it gonna flow? Not
Yeah.
be crazy, which,
House burns down. Someone looks to replace it or develop that property. It's guidelines for new construction.
Yeah,
Because that one can't be rehabbed or restored. It's gone,
yeah,
up and stone.
right.
And I think we would love to talk about guidelines for new construction.
Okay. We'll get some more examples. Very nice.
So. Not entirely related to that, but not on this list, there's something that occurred when Nate was mentioning. New homeowner, something that real estate agents can have. One of the issues that I brought up at our previous meetings was there are a lot of people who buy homes in historic districts who aren't aware of the ordinance to which their properties are gonna be subject through no fault of their own. Nobody tells them though.
We do send a letter.
That's after you own it.
Right.
Right,
Cause that's
I
what we
can
find
say,
out.
Just in my home, I asked the real estate agent
Yeah.
and the previous owner, I know this is houses in a Bangor historic district, are there any restrictions? The two of them said, absolutely not. You can do
Wow.
whatever you want.
so
So,
what I'm wondering,
and it's, you know, and I think it comes to, you know, like you're saying, I think it's great that it should be disclosed by an agent, but that then and I think that was why I was told, no, you do whatever you want, because it was scaring people away. Saying, well, I can't do anything, I can't, you know, this is gonna need to be done. And it, in a way, is deterring sales of the properties.
so my thought on that is there is a finite list of properties that are subject to the ordinance. I know, because we sent postcards to every property owner in the historic district. And it would seem to me that the city ought to be able to record something in the registry so that when somebody's doing a title search on any one of these properties, it says, subject to the historic preservation ordinance, see Bangor chapter, whatever, for applicability. I mean, that's easy. It doesn't put the onus on the existing homeowner. It doesn't put the onus on the real estate agent. And it puts, I guess, puts the onus on the title attorney.
I can't speak for the abilities of the city of Bangor, but that sounds reasonable to me.
We'll find out if we're able to do that. I just need to find out from our legal staff.
Thank you.
We're
That's,
empowered to do that.
that's an interesting point, an interesting point from you as well, because when we bought our house, our agent told us up front it was part of the historical neighborhood, we would have to go through anything from the street, didn't get into detail, didn't know the detail, but knew there was a process. There's an empty house next to us that's been for sale for some time that been out on the porch and had the people who were looking at the house come over and say, what's the neighborhood like? And is it part of the historical? Do you have to go through process to get the roof done or get this done? And yes, there is part. So there is some education, I think, that could be beneficial, not just on a title search, but to, if we have inconsistency of realtors, that's a really big deal, because these people are gonna buy that house and then find out later when they get a letter,
Yeah,
oh, by the way, you know,
The education on the
Yeah.
bar.
Well, I was gonna say, is there anything that says that we as a commission can't hold an educational workshop for realtors or for? the
Yeah,
maintenance?
that's a good
We're
idea.
specifically charged with helping educate the public.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
no, and I think as
So
somebody
we do
looking,
have meetings, we've gone and spoken to them on a multitude of things like subdivision and things like that, so.
I love nothing
So,
more than.
can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to point out, as part of the grant that we're working on, we do actually have a presentation planned for realtors and developers in January. It'll be at the end of January. And we'll be talking about historic resources in Bangor, among other things. And we can definitely try to emphasize, where they are, and please let people know when you're selling a property. So,
But you would only have to do you can record an affidavit in the registry of deeds.
Right.
It is that simple.
because I think the way it is now, you look, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm looking at this house, well, my neighbor's house has vinyl windows, has asphalt. I guess that's approved, I guess they approved it, and I understand people do it, you don't get caught, that's the way, but there's so many that you would have to assume, like West Broadway alone, 50% of the houses have asphalt roofs. So you would assume, and same with Broadway, you would assume, well, if 50% have it, it must be allowed in some sense, I mean, my house has some vinyl windows already, it had them when I bought it. I don't know if they were, but it's.
Some sites of previous meetings, of course, we don't only get and knock down, drag out fights about slate roofs, but we also have knock down, drag out fights about windows. And there's 6 years, there were windows. And it's just, well, I mean, sincerely, like, we do talk a lot about windows because they are a defining feature of a lot of houses' facades. And that does become I cannot remember the property, and if Mike was here, he'd slap me because he would know it off right off the top of his head. But we definitely had like one very historic house that had old windows on the sides and like, or original windows on the sides and then different generations here and then vinyl one, like they have several different generations of windows and that becomes hard to hold them to a standard of what you should represent historically because you're already outside of
20
that.
years.
And it's different owners and different, like, and that's, again,
I use most, I don't mind is that way, this window doesn't match the other
Yeah.
window in the same room, some are 6 panels, some are no panel, one has them.
My place on Broadway has 170 some odd 200 windows and there are a bunch, even facing Broadway, that are vinyl and we've owned it for 20 years and they were vinyl before that.
so the guidance that I again pulled out of our camp training was fresh for me, was that we should be not trying to make owning a historic property punitive. Because if the goal is preservation, to keep the buildings there, we have to do what we can to educate and help and advise so that it's not an unfair burden, a deterrent, a detriment. And sorry about your realtor. I'm trying to keep that like foremost in my mind as we've been going through a lot of this, or since those sessions. So I guess,
Just a general observation about this. I think that, trying to think about how do we, so I think there are 9 historic districts in Bangor now, kind of clustered around downtown, the older section of the city. And the challenge is, how do we help residents in that district sort of express their pride and their interest in this as part of what the Historic Commission does? Right, if all we are is like a statutory body who's saying no, or do this or that, that's not the environment to really grow a sense of why are we proud of the historic buildings in Bangor. So I don't know if there are existing organizations that are kind of, that actually think about the historic districts and how could we partner with them? How could we, I don't know, I mean, there's like a annual Historic Preservation Day that celebrates a famous historic preservation person. We could, over the course of 9 years, do some kind of event in each of those districts. The challenge is just, we're a volunteer commission and that takes some time and energy, but if residents in a particular district said, hey, we want to be the first ones to do this and let's organize something where we would walk the bounds of the district and we could get someone like our architectural consultant or someone from Bangor Historical Society to talk to us a little bit about this. That would be a way to kind of energize us in positive ways while we're also struggling.
I was just curious, is there a repository somewhere that has some of these properties that we own? Like, obviously there'd be sketches, but of these buildings, because
Rebecca, you're probably.
Bible.
Yeah, the Bible, historical, yeah.
I have a big thick red book, but it has like just one little paragraph of our house and no picture.
Is it by Deborah? You have,
Yeah.
like,
Orange spine.
Is that the one I showed you? Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
she's like the queen of everything that Bangor would have. If
Well-
he doesn't have it and it's just a little tiny section for your.
Yeah, I mean, there's some beautiful
I would reach
examples
out
of
to
homes
the
in different
Bangor
areas, but
But
our house isn't in.
yeah, I think you should reach out to the Bangor Historical.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of research on
Yes.
top of her research.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, okay.
They are, I'm on that board too, so they're fantastic.
You know, I'm.
But there's the architectural firm downtown across from the bagel shop that has a lot of the original blueprints of the houses and the templates that were used to hand carve all the woodwork that were done on the river, on the wood mills. They have them in storage in the basement of their facility. That would be fantastic stuff to always, when I've gone down and see it, come and see it, but I've never.
Yeah, I'd like to because of a few of our fireplaces. One part broken here, another part's good.
Oh, you should definitely talk to
Okay.
And some of the.
See, I'm going now.
them. Okay, I know, I'll help you.
And some of the houses, some of the properties on the National Register should potentially have Habs hair. If they've not had Habs hair, but they should have some sort of documentation on background, like why they're significant, what criteria they're significant under. Habs hair, if there's anything for those, so that's the Historic American Building Survey, Historic American Engineering Record. So that came about in the New Deal basically employed architects and drafters.
I don't think there's any private residence in Habs and
Oh,
Bangor.
really?
I have looked it up, clicking on it.
Never mind, we won't go
A
into
bunch of
that.
matches, and there's a couple of bridges. I think they're mostly.
Wow.
Like beyond us, I know this is actually, I don't know if I'm saying it, but. In St. Andrews, they have this beautiful thing where every single historic house or every single house in a historic area has a plaque with the age of the house on it. And how cool would that be if we had something like that? Because it's not only educating the entire town, but it's educating any potential buyer at the house of the age of the house and that it's historical. Of course, I would have to go through that because it would be attached.
The commission may erect a suitable sign or marker indicating the significance of
Okay, there you go.
any designated site, landmark, or district with income available to the commission. Which we have done. Income available to the commission with appropriations for that purpose. Subject to obtaining written permission from the owners of the property, because we don't get to break onto someone's property and put up a sign.
Right.
Upon which the sign or markers be erected, but that is also specified in our charter as something we should look to do.
I would love to do that because I like that with St. Andrews because then you can see the ages.
Seeing those in Boston.
Yeah.
There's a lot of historic, but it's significant, like there's one on the house that Paul Revere stayed in.
Right.
There's one on the house that John Quincy Adams and stuff like that, and it's not
Paul
just,
stayed at our house.
well, all right, but it's like those ones, like real, like historic importance, not just because your house is old.
Right, right.
I'll get those too, like if your house is listed on the actual national
Yeah.
register, you have to purchase it yourself, the Park Service doesn't give it to you. But you can get those as well. It would be good to have those,
I would love
or signage or something for our historic districts.
There's at least 37 house, like buildings in Bangor, they're specified in our code, that probably should have a plaque. At least.
So I think this is the kind of thing that we could partner with Bangor Historical and with neighborhood groups and, it wouldn't be like, you have to put this on your
Right.
house, but it could be like, oh, my neighbors did it, I'm gonna do it. That would raise consciousness of that district.
I've made a note of things as we strayed a little bit from where we were talking, what we're talking about with just outreach, because Liam, you and I brought Budo from the Cultural Commission together, and that commission is very focused on outreach. And then we went to historic preservation, now I felt like we had none of that anymore, which was a bit of a, culture shock. I've heard frustration from commission members who are not present at this point that we aren't doing that kind of outreach. And if there's a will or desire from the commission, even if you and I are not here to do it anymore, but if there's a will or desire from the commission, then that's something that we should probably look to formalize in some way.
Mhm.
It's in the code, I don't think it's well understood, and so we haven't taken that role, and I know we talked a little bit about it already, but there are other historical commissions have more active and less, or active roles and not just here's your certificate, here's your certificate.
So this would be something that we might ask the council to consider. Would they give the HPC a budget to do outreach and community engagement?
Yeah,
It wouldn't take much, but if we had a little budget, it would get us off our.
As part of our budget process, we do always ask for funds to be the match to the program that we get from Maine Historic Preservation that we've been doing the survey
Right.
work on. So, and we can continue to do that and have a project of the year kind of thing.
Well, I mean, even something as simple as having a social media footprint, because some of these historic preservation commissions have wonderful, like St. Augustine, they have a wonderful,
Yeah,
social media
they
presence where they're highlighting this building and its history, or hey, they found this ship off the coast, like here's its history, and how that ties into St. Augustine.
Even if
Why
they,
can't
the
they?
public could understand that the Bangor Historical Society is different from from the historical preservation. That'd be ideal.
I didn't even know that. I thought that was, I thought it was all, you're all some of the same kind of thing. Which is, to your point, which I think is interesting, and to the outreach point, there are 9 historical districts in the town, is that correct? Encourage, a member from each one of the districts to represent that district would be really helpful. So when we have a problem, Carr would be our representative for
Our brainstorm is representing today.
could be part of the council to represent historic owners as a dialogue.
So something else is I was going through the code was that we as a commission are So we, of course, are volunteers, and we have a consultant, Mike, but did you know that we can request or appoint other consultants?
You do not know what you said.
I mean, if we are feeling like you're feeling like you don't have the right information, you're not represented, like you can have that. Mike brings us very detailed and very informative and relevant information for what we do, but doesn't, if we're feeling like we're lacking information, you can have other consultants. That's something, that if we have identified a need, we could enshrine it. It doesn't have to be enshrined in code, like, it's already there, it's just a matter of, do you, as a commission, want to have those things? And I say do you, because term limits. So you too.
Can't believe
There's
it's still
two
here.
years.
I don't even know.
I plan to teach college in January.
Okay.
I'll see before you guys, I'll figure it after.
No, I think outreach.
Just keep that in mind, like, if outreach is important, like, we can look for someone to help with that. If you want, I'm gonna pick on you for a second, Rick, you want someone who does construction to be there as a reference or a consultant, that's also useful, because they can bring that perspective that is perhaps different. I know when, at least Liam and I started, we had an architect who was already on the commission, so you
Yeah,
had someone
so
who could kind
helpful.
of speak for that. But we haven't had that in quite a while, and there's been quite a turn. So we've had the historical perspective,
And Mike's our architect too.
right, but I just,
Yeah, we're on the board.
multiple perspectives is useful. And it's good to have, I mean, we don't necessarily have to have a lot of paid consultants, but if you want other advisors, it's not impossible to have. It's
That's a good
there.
point there.
And if you want representatives from each historical district to be an advisor for each commission meeting, I mean, you can do that. They probably should at least show up to a commission meeting where something in their section was being discussed, but from a neighborhood association, I guess. I mean, I don't know that we necessarily have to have that in code. But we can put that out there if the city wants to talk about that.
I think in a sense, you have that in, when somebody does apply for something, it goes to whatever the distance.
The butters.
Yeah, it's like, it goes,
100.
is it 100 feet?
Yes,
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
100.
so, I mean, a lot of my neighbors get it that aren't in a historic district.
Yep.
A lot of them still are, but it's, kind of like the outreach is, if somebody was doing something. Yeah, I'm sure with most of the time, you don't get a lot of people showing up to speak in opposition. Maybe you do.
Sometimes.
And it could be, but I think that's then a good play towards it also, but if none of the neighbors showed up, they probably don't care what you're doing, because it's, in that sense. But I don't know, it's something to, of course, and maybe spread that further than 100 feet, make it to let that district know. This person wants to do this to their house. You should all know, because not only does it affect the guy within 100 feet, I mean, West Broadway, they're big lots, 100 feet is just 4 houses, so kind of make it, send that to the whole neighborhood, let the neighborhood decide, like, is this crazy what this person wants to do, or are we okay with it? Somebody might say, well, my house already has that, so I'm of course okay with it, and
Well, I know
Some-
what Stephen King wanted to make his property when he mentioned about having it as his neighboring property for purposes of writers. to go and have to do it. He invited, I think, everybody on that whole street there.
And I assume the 100 feet is probably just what's specified in
The
code.
direct about
Yeah.
it, usually just maybe one or few extra.
I think the idea of sending it out to the district
district.
questions a hell of an idea.
Yeah.
everybody has a vested interest that lives there. Looking at their, longevity, resale, all of that, and and I think then as neighbors, we would say, like, if somebody really wants to do something that's not gonna help, they're gonna speak out, otherwise people are like, he wants a roof, he wants windows. I don't care, and
I do like the idea of it being a district communication versus an abutters communication, or not limited to abutters, but.
that gets passed, hit the gavel.
So that's one.
When-
It's the only workshop, we'll only make a recommendation. I know Ann's right furiously over that, so.
I like the idea of doing more outreaching, because, I'm just thinking of like, Maine Archaeology Month. It's come and gone, should be May board, nothing about it. historic preservation has special months and nothing has been said about it. I feel like the more that we can sort of bring in general awareness other than the Bangor Daily News posting pictures of Ed getting yelled at. You know, I think we can bring some positive.
You should do the same picture every time.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have say at that meeting, what's going on?
That would be
Photographer's only there once. What's it?
Well, I think in that, in a sense, that's the same as, you know, making the whole district stats community,
Oh, yeah.
sort of have it, like, I think that would be great to be like, invite a district, maybe no one will show up, maybe everyone will show up, be like, what are the real issues facing you with this home, you know, and just to educate yourselves on it too, you know?
Maybe an annual survey.
Yeah,
Would be in the budget this, and I don't know what your response rate would be, but to every house that's listed in one of the districts, to send a survey, what other issues are you dealing with? How old's your roof? Just sort of get a general idea of what
Watch out for.
happening,
Yeah.
yeah, what you're gonna be facing in upcoming.
Well, and the other thing too with the outreach too is there's other stuff that, since the realtors aren't sharing information, like I wonder with some of these historic preservation tax credits and things like that, like how much of stuff like that are
Exactly.
some of these historic property homeowners even aware of, you know, or, yeah, they may have possibly tap into, so. The outreach component of that is always something we can then use to just spread awareness of the historic preservation stuff in general.
So is it worth it, commission question, is it worth it to put into our code that we should be designating this one member of the commission as an outreach officer? So to speak, we have a chair and a vice chair, I mean, you can assign that to one of them, I guess, if you'd like, or do you want a third person? I'm positing for the four who are here. And any future members of the commission.
I think as long as that position can coordinate with the city office.
Well, they would have to be, it's just one
Yeah.
of those, like, if outreach seems to be lacking, and I think we've been talking about that for at least a couple of years. That we've felt that, I mean, I know Peter is a passionate advocate for outreach and doing more than we have done, I think he's been frustrated that we haven't, but. Outreach is, in my day job, if you don't have someone specifically assigned to like care about it, then they don't.
Yes.
I think one of the other things that we could do with the letter that we do send out is to send the tax credit information.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
available.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll come up with like a
Just do a
some
QR
kind of
code.
flyer or
Yeah.
QR.
If they can just
Okay.
scan it and it takes them to the website and say, oh,
Yeah.
this is on. And
This
that
is
would,
available to you. Yeah,
if it's sent digitally, then you can just put the links in there too.
yeah.
Put it on the plaques that we're gonna put on.
That's right, you can put it on the flags. You don't live in a lot of QR codes are correct.
Read the outreach part. So the next city recommendation was adding flexibility for substitute materials, I think this also speaks to some of the stuff that you would propose anyway,
That's in this.
right?
From our
So we can talk about those together if we'd like, So the city again suggests that we should discuss adding flexibility for substitute materials. I think that having clarification at least from a language perspective and some updated guidelines on what is acceptable would be wonderful things to have. They're not gonna just materialize themselves, but in the interest, and if I missed one of the things that you had put in here that pertains to this, please say something. I didn't want to read the entire thing all at once, but so. I think the stuff that refers to substitute materials, you had under 148-9, section B 2C. In the event that replacement is necessary, the new material, when viewed from the street, should be as visually compatible as possible with the material being replaced. Full stop.
And that there was at least one counselor who I think made that point at a recent council meeting. And by way of example, I was before this commission, way before any of you were here for my building on Broadway. When AZEC first came out, and AZEC isn't PVC, it's wood based, and I don't know how they treat it, but it's rock proof. And we've got some fascia that's going. And when you stand on Broadway and look up at our 3-story building and you see white AZAC. It looks exactly the same as white painted pine. But I was told, no, unless it's pine, spruce or fir, not gonna be allowed. That makes no sense today, when you can put
And the
something
thing with
on.
AZAC only comes in, I think it only
Comes
comes
in
in white,
white.
but you can,
Yeah.
PVC holds paint better than any wood ever could.
It's great.
It does not come off. It's fade like any paint. But it's there, and like you said, it will never rot.
And stuff like that, and I'll use another example. Carl's house has a lot of windows that are black, and I can't remember what the grid pattern is. But you could put a black vinyl window in there that would look exactly the same, would be energy efficient,
And open.
and would last the next 100 years.
Nice to put some.
Versus-
Well,
Versus a wood clad window, which you're gonna be painting every 3 or 4 years, which is eventually gonna rot, which is gonna warp.
in a compound mine, I got those crazy aluminum, whatever they
Storm
are.
windows.
Door windows that can't open.
That you break one each year, putting it up or down, yeah.
So I guess the question is whether you're trying to
Yeah.
achieve the historic look and preserve that, or whether you really want people to be working with materials that were used in the late 1800s, early 1900s, which for a lot of reasons doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Well, if we actually had the wood, same as back then,
You
When
need
the
the
grain
paint
was-
too, though.
well,
Gilded for life, right?
no, but, it's amazing because the wood is so fine grained, and now when you buy that wood, you can't.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Trees grow too fast, I mean, that's what it is.
But I think we're all into preservation, not restoration. I think that's the line that we're trying to draw here, that. I think that it's important to have, Stanley, Rick has done such a great job, Steve done such a great job trying to define what those things would be, because I want there to, if someone's gonna do something next door to me, I don't want them to devalue my property by doing something unsightly, that's not durable, that isn't gonna look good. I want to be, everybody held to a standard that is pleasing, still maintaining some original look to the house, yet affordable and durable. And I think we've come to in 2025 to a place where you can, I love my slate roof. But I know it's got a lifespan to it, and thanks to Rick, I know the lifespan is pretty good. So I know and not just the affordability of the cost of having to redo, what was it, $200,000 to do my roof, something like that?
Goes to about
My house for 300. So the affordability of it, but then the other real downside, and this is the lost art now, is the ability to do slate roofs, to do some of the, and wanted to go with the original wood to restore a house, very different process than just trying to preserve it and keep water from getting into my attic. I think that's the goal, I think, of that. And I don't think anybody here is interested in doing something ugly to their house.
And I think that applies whether you're talking about a slate roof, whether you're talking about windows, whether you're talking about corbels, that you can buy a corbel that would look exactly the same from the street, but would be made of a material that's gonna last for the next 100 years.
And I think, again, it goes to appearance too, like the aluminum storm windows that we all have on some of our windows. They're not nice looking, they're ugly, they're broken. Sometimes the window inside beyond that doesn't open anyways, because it's been painted so many times.
They're creatures of their time.
Yeah, but then it's, and I guess then we could look and say, all right, are we, which way do we want to go? Is it we would rather see somebody leave that and let the paint peel and this and that, or say, is the alternative like a new vinyl window that matches in a lot of the ways with the, as, I know it's some have been approved where it's, as long as it has the grids on the outside, so it appears to be very similar.
True simulated divided light,
Yes.
might be proud of.
Yeah, that's very good. I was trying to think of what it was. I had the initials and I couldn't, very good. So I mean, that's something, so is that, is that better than saying, all right, the other, the other option in a lot of homes that we see, they're just doing nothing. Which is better, and I'm not like an advocate for vinyl siding by any means, and I'm not saying you guys need to have vinyl siding, I disagree, but there are some homes that, the way they look now, anything would be better, anything at all. Paint would be great, but like from that, like, which is the worst of the two evils, and I'm not saying approve somebody for vinyl, but like just maybe a little bit of, okay, this can't be, but this is better than the
So,
alternative.
see, I think that half the people in the room, that's our issue, really.
Yeah,
That's the crux of it, what you're saying. Is there any contrary opinion in the room? Does anyone disagree with anything along the side?
No.
It's about wording, it's just that it's worded properly.
I don't, I think that the existing language of the HPC allows for exactly these kinds of difficult decisions, like what is the trade-off between this expense and continued dilapidation or whatever it might be? I think that's already what's here.
Right.
It's,
Well,
and
I think,
that's why they have some national standards, but they all say it ultimately comes down to a local committee who understands local circumstances, who can weigh off some of these balances.
and I think to have just a small, not the, like I said, nothing that crazy, but like windows, roofs, things like that, material to replace a pine board with AZEK or something like that, that's going to appear the same, that you'd have to get right up to it, touch it to know the difference, and probably not even care. It's like, all right, well, it's preserving rather than it rotting again, like new wood rots in 10 years. And they're like, okay, this is better. It keeps, and then it's not, somebody isn't coming back then or sneaking and doing something that you really don't want.
I think the other provision to look at on the 148.9 B2 is E. To the bottom of the page, it says changes which may have taken place in the course of time are evidence of history and development. And what's bothered me about that section, I'll go back to my place that has wooden windows, old rounded windows, and a whole bunch of vinyl replacement windows. At what point are we trying to freeze time and say, no changes after this? This recognizes that materials change over a period of time.
I don't remember Rebecca's favorite building.
What, handbike?
No,
Oh,
no, you're not favorite building, but
oh,
yeah, that one.
So,
Your changes accrued their value over time. She just doesn't like the way it looks.
so you appreciate the language in E, or you think?
Well,
it's problematic?
I appreciate that language, but I think, and I'm not casting aspersions on the current commission, but my experience over the years has been there appears to be some point in time that some commission members have said it's gotta look like it did on this date, but this recognizes that these properties do change over time. And I think we need language that reinforces that.
so
Even
how
if
do we
it's,
set the standard though for what?
Yeah,
Like,
that's tough.
I mean, as the house changes and shifts and like things are updated, then where do we go to historically get it?
I
You know what I mean?
I think it's the visual compatibility.
Right. To its original or what it was 50 years ago,
Yeah, because
that's what we have to worry about.
that's 50 years to leave a marker.
Exactly. Because what someone did to a house 50 years ago, they could have put like 1970s crap all over it.
Right.
But is that what we really want?
I think so.
I think
Is that
even-
what it look like?
I think even
Me too.
you guys is
I'd have to go there.
credit in the just very recent one approving solar panels for the church. I think if that had been, which solar has kind of taken off and really took off, let's say the last 15 years, I think if it were 15, 20 years ago, and maybe one house in Bangor had solar, and this someone from a historic home came and said, I want to put solar panels, you say, absolutely not. You want to do what? No, but it's something that has evolved. We're looking now at trying to be more environmentally friendly. Same with, windows and things like that are gonna be, I mean, I don't know what the R value of my window is, it's a negative something. Now, it's
It's windy.
One thing that doesn't matter.
yeah, so it's kind of one of those like, saying, okay, and that, all right, we have to be more cognizant of what's going
Like
on in the
reduce it.
environment, things like that, yeah, that, yeah.
So there
heat
needs to be
pumps are-
like two different elements that we're talking about then, because like some of them are like, how do we preserve the house so that it actually stays like warm? Or like up to date, but then also how do we visually hold it to a certain standard?
How do we make owning a historic home appealing and not a detriment?
Which is the thing, like, if you said, oh, no, you live in that home, you can't, you can't switch over to gas and use a direct vent system, no, you gotta keep running coal.
You guys should be using whale oil, so.
Right, it's, kind of evolved with, as time evolves, that
I'm finding it hard to
this
find.
needs to evolve. Yeah.
I got a guy.
I do think it's important though to, if we can rewrite certain things. That we don't get stuck on the, like I mentioned, okay, so this got updated to 1970, so is that our standard? Because ideally, if a historical home is from 1888, I would prefer it to kind of have some inkling of looking like it's from 1888 and not an updated crap house from 1970, sorry.
The problem we've got to be careful is that we've looked at applications in the past where the book of old timey homes says, oh, back in 1870, this house had,
Cedar shingles?
black windows or
Right.
white windows or whatever it was. And then sometime in the Carter administration, they put in the opposite, where they put white windows instead of black. And then we have commissioners that don't want to approve it. Well, it's not black windows like it was in the 1870s. It doesn't matter that this structure needs new windows so that these lower income people can have like heat and be warm and not freeze to death. And so that's the language that we've got to figure out.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with what
Yeah.
you're saying. We gotta figure out that, we gotta preserve the historic integrity, the
Right.
historic feel, the character, but we need to also be flexible in how we're doing that, because we wanna be able to allow these new materials, be able to allow more modern replacements if we don't have the craftspeople that can do whatever. So how do we,
Great
How
question.
do we?
how do we do that?
So three points for me. One, I feel like often Mike has brought up the part about historical changes that require historical significance on their own. Sparing your house is an example of that, because cedar shingles would be the appropriate
Right.
story. If we were really holding on, like, no, you need to put cedar shingles on there.
Right.
It's not slate at all, but slate has acquired historical significance all on its own because of what happened in the past. So we got focus on the slate roofs because in many ways they are one of the defining characteristics of historic preservation exists to preserve. Now, that being said. So, I'm gonna go back to my camp learnings, but so one of the things that came up from a commission that has already been through this, and I think it was Denver and, but they did a lot of committee outreach, and they started a process that went on for a very long time before they got their summaries together, but they were generous enough to kind of share some of their conclusions, and a lot of my take on this is like, no, we need to make it appealing for people to want a historic home, because otherwise you lose the home.
All
Some of their conclusions were be strict on front and street facing facades, which I think we have already arrived at that on our own. Their own chart, with all the windows. Allow more on the sides and rear facing facades, because they're not defining the neighborhood. Your backyard is your backyard. Your front yard in a historical district, unfortunately, you share with everyone else in Broadway. Don't be so nitpicky when it is unnecessary. And I think that that's kind of the crux of what we're trying to talk about here is we need to have some idea of, well, we and the community need to have some idea of what they can and cannot do in advance of having to come and have us shoot them down or give them the end.
Well, that's a handout, can help with that. as
Right.
well. So it can show, do you have a failing slate roof?
And Rick, I know that was in
These
your,
are,
Okay.
Well, I think the visual compatibility is a significant part of that rather than the current language about composition, texture, finish and everything else.
Phrasing aside, and I know this has been a point of frustration, I think, for everybody recently and even further back. The language in some cases is intentionally vague and couched in the terms of special circumstances to give your local commissions exactly the thing that they're supposed to have to help their community, which is the flexibility to step away from the strict guidelines that the federal government has put out. Like,
I don't disagree with.
right, it's frustrating, but
Having appeared before all kinds of planning boards. Any other permit that you seek from the state level or from the municipal level, you should have criteria, and somebody ought to be able to look at their application and say, this one, I need this one, I need this one. Do these things, I'm gonna get it. And I know you guys try hard, but there's, in my opinion, too much of this ordinance over the years has been very subjective rather than objective.
Rick, I think I'm on record at the last meeting saying that I felt it behooves us to be consistent in our judgments so that people have a good idea of what we're going to do before they get there. No, I don't think anybody disagrees with you. I don't want people, you feel like you have to beat it down. Like,
No,
I think we are all like, no, we don't mind that. I just. Some of the frustration, I just want to be clear for everybody, is that
It is
the
your-
language was specifically vague for a reason. And I just want to be careful as we long-term look at this of how we approach our code changes, that you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater here. Like, it is a great idea to have a pictorial guide for what is gonna fit and what you need. And I think it's a great idea for representatives from the different historic districts to be present. It's gonna be hard for State Street because there's only 3 buildings, but it's a great idea. Like, I like all of those because the more engagement, the more people you have that are involved in this, the better chances that the houses are not going to just fall apart. Please.
So I'm wondering, on kind of going along your line, do we need to? The spotlight back on us when we have these new members come and have a sit down where we're saying, this is how we make our decisions. This is the rules we're basing on, here's our code. We're saying this is, vague to be subjective, whatever the words are, just so that coming into this, everyone's on the same page, and everyone has a background in historic preservation, or has a background in history or art or architecture. They may just be passionate about old building, or maybe they got thrown on the board because it was the only open seat or whatever. Just so that they kind of, everyone's on the same page on this is how we're approaching all of these. This needs to be sort of your thought process, the do's and don'ts, because we do a great job with ethics, we do a great job, and here's the background of the city and our districts and everything. But actually, training the members of the commission,
Yeah.
on basics of what we're doing. Maybe we need to do a little more of that. I mean,
Yeah.
and jump on me if I'm wrong, but
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
But I was pre-COVID. I don't know.
This is on my list of things to bring up at a different meeting, because we already had enough going on in this one. As far as clarification on how we bequeath knowledge to people coming in, like Liam and I are stepping out, so it's you two and the other members. No, we have to move up forward and official, so your super secret ceremony would have to be posted.
Many times.
I'm reminding you to prepare you. I intend to be there in January as a member of the public. Don't disappoint me, Rebecca.
I'm not president, I'm not doing that.
I think to Rick's point, it's important. I think it's probably why we're all here.
Mhm.
Is the idea of flexibility versus inconsistency, the perception of inconsistency, and that is where I think the language really needs to be cleaned up.
Not
on how
disparate.
things-
Right,
So we know, hey, how come he got that and I didn't? How come
Exactly.
he did it?
and
You
then we
know,
have
so
to explain
Exactly.
why,
Well, I think.
and then we can look that
And you're
guy.
the Bangor Daily News, give him a piece of slate, you know, it's.
If there's something to put in my picture in there when I'm not on the commission, I don't know, they need to update that.
I think
Requested, I think.
Yeah, that's
Come on
the
now.
picture.
It'll be there forever.
So I wonder if so the city suggested about 20 changes to the existing code. And I wonder if we could move through that list fairly quickly
Right.
and just quickly say, we agree, you agree, we want to talk about this one some more.
Fully
And then
support
that would help us, you know, the staff could generate material for the next meeting that would be.
Sometimes
more
it's easier to
productive.
react to things.
Correct.
That's great.
So would we like a collection of recommendations for flexibility on substitute materials to discuss?
So, I think yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the answer was yes.
so the
there, but-
staff has suggested to add flexibility about substitute materials. So that sounds good.
Yep.
Let's work on that. It's interesting, their language for the standard C, which also is a standard that Rick called our attention to. Here's the language that city staff suggested. In the event that replacement is necessary, the new material should match the material being replaced in color, design, texture, and other visual qualities, and where feasible, materials.
I don't like the other one. I thought we
It's
said-
underlined,
Oh, it is
No, I think.
but it's underlined, this is the note that,
underlined but not crossed out.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Yeah, that's right.
don't agree with.
So can I make a comment?
Yeah.
So I had actually drafted that, and that was based on what Portland Yarmouth had done, but also based on the Secretary of Interior's guidelines. So it's come straight from that. And I just do want to caution, and Anne had mentioned it in her memo too, that, you know, we do have to try to follow the Secretary's guidelines as much as possible if we want to remain a certified local government, which again gets us grant funding to do a lot of these things that you guys have talked about doing. So I just want to point that out again.
and that's the baby with the bathwater part.
Color work here.
It's the thicker interior guideline, thicker interior guideline. That's why, like, we have the exceptions ability, but that's why some of the phrasing is the way it is.
Okay, cause like, we can't say, no, your house can't be purple,
Right, that was abolished.
Right,
not that.
There were approved.
So how does that fit in with colors?
It's a good question.
Yeah,
Well,
So maybe
the
the
material,
color of
it says it has to match. It doesn't have to match. If we're not allowing color,
Right, you can't,
Right,
you
the
can't
color
vote
of
based
the-
on color. That's what you were, before I was thinking that too, that like. if
I think we were
black,
thinking
black,
of,
it is.
yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were thinking of like color of the roof or the window, you know.
Yeah, color. Yeah, that color of roof or window, not like
Some-
paint colors.
that should probably be worded a little bit clearer then. I
Okay.
can see someone absolutely confused.
Yeah,
For
added note, like color is defined as,
sure,
but I think,
okay.
other than that, people's change like this.
Yeah.
So,
that's fine. The color one,
Yeah.
we don't have.
if that's the standard we wanna review, then that's definitely something we can and should.
Yeah. Just so it doesn't.
And then we have standard D where economically and technically feasible probably needs a definition. Not
Could
anybody
you-
disagree with that?
Economically feasible, we've suggested some language in there, which is. You know, I think we put it both in the evaluation standards and in the hardship standards, and that is. That historic or original materials. Maybe this becomes moot if we have some better flexibility on substitute materials. But if it's gonna cost more than 1.5 times the cost of substitute materials. That was Dan Wellington's suggestion. Then A, it would be proof for hardship, and B, it would be proof that it's not economic feasible to do it.
And then for technical feasibility, you had the commission shall allow materials that are longer lasting or more energy efficient, indeterminate. So,
Yes.
I mean, I understand the intent of it, I just worry about the arbitrariness of it, that. You know, it seems like it's very specific, but is it 1.5 times the cost of aluminum window? Like, what is the 1.5 times of?
I made a note on that I would want to discuss that in like probably greater detail, but I think to Liam's point earlier, do we need to define economically and technically feasible? Are we in agreement that we do need to define those things?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I need to
Then-
think about how that might work, I mean, it'd be nice to have something very specific, but I'm just kind of
Just gotta be careful.
thinking of like examples of, yeah.
Does Shippo's office
Right,
have?
I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
the biggest example is the $1.2 million slate roof.
Yeah,
But-
Yeah.
and then-
But I don't
Always-
like, I
always
don't
that.
think something like that needs to go into the revised code. Because I don't think any commission would ever require a homeowner with the existing rules to spend $1.2 million to redo their roof.
But-
Right, it just doesn't pass.
But again, economic feasibility is one of the guidelines. So in some manner, whether it's that way or some other way, that has to be defined, not only in terms of hardship, but simply what is economically feasible.
I agree, I think we should work to clarify what
Yeah.
that language
I
is.
think they wanna work to clarify it, but not put themselves in a box. So that we.
Right, you don't want to tie your hands too much.
Like I could, we all know there are different grades of windows.
Yep.
Right? So if you have the very cheapest window or the very most expensive window by the same dealer. Well, that most expensive window is more than 1.5 times the cheapest window. So if we get so specific where we're like set up this metric, it seems like we're creating a potential problem where they could cite that kind of language. And
All of a sudden you got a aluminum roof.
I'd say,
All of a sudden you got aluminum, right?
Well, we've definitely struggled with the economic part of, again, with the economic part of what is true, what is feasible, as we've been discussing slate roofs especially, but this came up with windows as well, like the economic feasibility of some of this stuff is a challenge. So we need something, I think, to help define it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I think that, the National Alliance on Historic Preservation was talking about. There's a national issue of, just availability of product. I mean, the reason why it's 1.2 is that there's just not a lot of people making it.
Yep.
And also not a lot of people, installing it. So there's also sort of an availability issue. It's not necessarily a monetary thing, it's hard to find a mason.
Right, it's
to
ebb
do
and flow.
this
thing.
thing.
Well, is that something that we can also address with the packet though, like if you're claiming economic hardship, do you have evidence to support why this is an economic hardship? Do you have quotes, do you have?
Because it makes the decision
Yeah,
easier
it's
for us to do
evidence.
within the limitations of our code as it is written right now.
Right.
That's just a thought about to Liam's point, yeah, I think we could have to be better defined.
We would love to see
I
some
think that's
definition.
great when it comes to, if you gotta jump to the hardship provisions. I'd like not on a regular basis to have to jump to the hardship provisions and have some standards that can reasonably be met without having to prove a hardship. That's my point.
Sure. But I just think it's important too, that if you're gonna have to claim a hardship, I think being able to show, yes, this is a hardship, here's my evidence to support why this is a hardship.
Steve learned that's what he should have done the first time.
Well, yeah, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus or anything, but I just think to learn from it. For folks in the future, which I think someone did learn from us, we did have a slate.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to.
I had.
Yeah, he had all of Rick's quotes. 'Cause
All the homeowners in that
I couldn't get
meeting.
anybody to give a quote. He luckily found somebody in
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, I think that did, that
Yeah.
also did a great job of showing, hey, yes, this is a hardship because you're A, B, C, D.
It was the due diligence evidence that we needed to apply the hardship clause.
To be an beneficiary.
And that is the problem with the hardship clause, is you
Exactly.
have to demonstrate
Yeah.
that. And in any case, but
That's what you're saying, Rick, is that you don't want that.
he doesn't want to have to demonstrate it all the time.
Right.
He doesn't have to jump right to hardship.
Doesn't make
That's
sense.
exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, because economic viability or whatever the language is part of the evaluation standards before you even get to hardship. So let's address there as well as in the hardship section.
And I don't have a suggestion on what kind of standard we would apply for that, but I think it's a definition or clarification on that is great.
And
Anya will come in with a Hail Mary, don't worry.
That's right, she will.
And as you're talking about, we need to develop this language. We've got a group of historic property owners who have been involved since sometime in the summer. it would be nice as language is drafted. If at some point it could be shared with us, and I'd be happy to be the conduit, so that we can look at it and offer our input before we get it at another workshop meeting or another actual meeting, so that we're not just reacting to something that we've read, just when the agenda comes out.
Right.
It would be very helpful, because maybe we're gonna agree with everything that staff puts together. Maybe we're gonna have some suggestions that might be helpful.
Cycling back or circling back, how we will look at that. As to Liam's point, the next item on the staff recommendations was lengthening the expiration approval time period for HPC permits. And can you speak to that briefly? Because I think we're not gonna object to it, but I'm just
Yeah.
not sure I understand.
I mean, sometimes just things take longer, you know, for whatever reason, the property sells and the permit's still there.
Is this the
There's
6
a lot of
months to a year clause?
Reasons why, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people need more time.
So
And just availability of products.
it's currently 12 months. Would an extension to 18 months be a reasonable?
Because that gives another kind of construction
Another
season in
season.
there.
I would say that could be our official recommendation. We should probably try it with everything else, but from here.
And I think that's something that they could be flexible on too, like, hey, this happened, my contractor. This happened to him, he broke his leg or he died, I need to, you'd be like, okay, no, deny it, start over, I don't see that happening, I think it can just be. You could extend it, but I think it can be that, or just have it as extensions can be made.
Would you put an extension as a minor approval process? I mean, if it's already been issued and it needs to be extended, you can have the chair and the vice chair, like, it doesn't have to go to the whole commission if we want.
Yeah, and I mean.
We wanna
at that
follow that
point-
process.
At that point.
Was that what you were thinking, Anya, was a
It's been
minor?
Issued by the city, I've had.
What was that? What was the question?
Were you thinking in the lengthening the expiration approval time period for HPC permits? Bullet point that if extended time is needed, it could just be part of the minor revision process, like that could just go
Yeah.
to the chair.
I
That's
was
actually
in-
That's
I
what
was
thought.
envisioning it being like the planning board process, where you have 2 years to complete, and then you can request extensions up to it's either 6 months or a year at a time, and it's a minor revision.
So our current code is 12 months of approval unless we set a different time limit. An extension or extensions of up to 1 year in total length may be gained as a minor alteration or revision.
So we're just or Anya, you're just suggesting that we match the planning board and use a 2-year time window?
Yeah.
I have no specific objections to
That's
that.
great, I don't
Yeah.
care seasons.
Okay,
Right, so then we have clearer language for solar installations, generators and heat pumps in historic districts, guidance for using vinyl windows, possibly increasing the ability for staff to review minor changes such as changing awning fabric and making changes that aren't visible from a street. As well as allowing for larger signage for second floor retail in the downtown development district. Half of that is something we've already discussed, is that we definitely like, so I guess the only specific points is. Do the 4 of us that are here, or anyone who is not on the commission but could be in the future, have any, always recruiting. Have any objections or concerns with increasing the ability for staff to review minor changes for awning fabric? And changes that aren't visible from a street? Okay. There, right.
Yeah, so my concerns about generators just related to ground disturbance for having to install any sort of underground cabling, underground wiring, whatever. Especially on historic property or within historic district, if it's not in fill.
So
If
you
it is in fill, I think,
would like clear language on that,
for archaeology, yes.
okay.
support that. Any objection to the discussing the ability, increasing the ability of staff to review minor changes?
That's fine. I do think the guidance for using vinyl windows would be very helpful. And it is another really complicated issue.
Yeah.
You know, that particularly has to do with the loss of glass in vinyl windows. The rims and the strips in them are much thicker than the older windows. So it's really something for homeowners to think about. the cost versus the preservation of those older windows. There is something really lost in that transition, which I hadn't really realized until I got to
Yeah.
know.
Like-
Yeah. Size are just so hard to get.
I don't know, I'm like, oh, I know exactly, I know what that means. Anyway,
But that's a good example of something that with some visual examples in the code could be really helpful and, you know, homeowners can see and then they can really think about.
Well, even a wood replacement window is still gonna have that same reveal like a vinyl one. Because you're not gonna get a window that fits that you're gonna put on a rope with window waves again. So no matter what, even a wood replacement window, any window to go into these holes,
Right.
you have to allow for something, because like,
unless
that's the
you're,
ones that don't shove it, then.
unless you have a very
that's the house,
specific
it's not like
reconstruction.
this or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
You have to allow for, to try to square it again is best, I think, no matter, but even
I think.
wood
some of
re, yeah. wood
Ones that we're
replacement
thinking
windows.
are like, there's this one in particular where it's rounded at the top. So it'd be really hard to get a vinyl one that's like curved, has curve to it. So, and when the vinyl ones were presented, it was like, it really cut down on how much CO.
On the, with the.
Yeah.
with the
It
curved
totally-
But I'm just highlighting, this is
Yeah.
a complicated issue. that
Right,
needs
there's always something.
More information and it's gonna be one of
It's
these ones
case by
that
case.
It really
comes
is
down
case by
case
case.
by
And that's how it's been.
But having some more information about it and some visual examples could help make the process a little bit more smoothly.
And sometimes that's why it has to be
Better.
projected, so we can have some wiggle room. For case by case.
Yes, that's the frustrating part about the code.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say about the signage for second floor retail, I think we just need to take a closer look, you know. I'm sure it makes sense, but I
I think
just
it's
don't,
on-
off the top of my head, have any idea what the current standard is.
Is it
What we've
related to visual impact?
It's a downtown development district, so there's different rules there.
Yeah, just that there is some curtailment of what a second floor business can put in their
Because
window.
if we're gonna try to
basically.
encourage business and it has to be on the second floor, they like to let people
Yeah.
know where they are.
Sure, sure.
But within reason, I
I think
guess,
it's the
to
same size
not fill the
as the
whole wall.
Yeah, well, this is just one of those things you have to consider with projects is visual impact
Yeah.
as well as direct effect. I think it's something to discuss, but I think maybe putting something where, you know, businesses can do that or find a way they can do that.
That needs to stand.
And what would it
Right.
entail? if
Yes.
Windows are out?
So let's talk about what the standards are
Yeah.
for,
Okay.
today.
Yeah.
What the standards are for that signage now and what, so we can match it with. We can come back to it if there's.
Yeah, let me know.
But let's talk about what the standards for second floor windows
Yeah.
are now and then what differences between first floor. I think
Okay.
that's probably reasonable to like start there.
Yeah.
Then we have clarifying that replacing to match doesn't require a permit.
Yeah, we've been, I mean, that's, I call it reverse permitting, but you tell somebody, if you do it like this, you don't have to go to a board, and a lot of people are say, well, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go to the board.
Can't imagine
And
people that
so,
don't wanna do that.
and that's why we say, you know, if you match exactly what's there, you don't have to go to the commission. But we probably should clarify that more, I mean, it kind of alludes to it in the code, but.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Would that be then for a window to say that I am gonna do the grid on the outside, that it wouldn't have to be approved by this committee, It'd be like code could handle that right
you're-
then?
I mean, if you're reglazing, like restoring a window, so it's exactly the way it was.
You're putting the same window back.
Yeah.
Okay.
To match.
Yeah.
I give you another example. I replaced one of the vinyl windows in my building. And I got a call from Jeremy Martin, said, hey, you're not supposed to be putting vinyl windows in there. I said, code says, replace same with same, got the same grid, same size, same brand, same everything.
Yep.
Send me a picture. Send them a picture. Yep, all right.
120 windows. that'd be okay.
Again, that darn problem though, let's say you do that exactly, you got that damn outside storm window that you can't,
We didn't have, it.
huh?
We didn't have. it.
Well, I do, and I can't open it.
Oh,
So I was thinking, do I go and try to buy those exactly the same? You can't buy them anymore, I don't think. Can you buy
Well,
those?
And the other to that me having spoke, I was actually, once again, last week, talking about it with, the fire inspector. He has said he could go into every one of these historic homes and condemn them. Because our windows might be big, but if they don't open, they're not egress windows anymore. Like if you are building a new house, when code comes in, they check for the resistance of the window. How easily does it go up? Will it stay up? Is it too loose? Is it too tight? Can a child do it? If you then say, well, first, okay, there's a fire, you gotta get this window free, jiggle it up. Find that piece of wood that hopefully is still in between this window and the storm window.
Yeah.
Get that.
Stays
They
there.
are
Yeah,
usually
I
not.
know.
It's
Yeah.
never there when you need it, though.
No,
And then
each
you
of
gotta
one
get
of
this, and then you have to open this aluminum storm window that,
That's
You
easy.
can't even
drive
drive it.
That's how I do
this
it.
is in the middle of a fire, can you do?
So fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was, one of the things that he brought up, that, they're great, historically, but they wouldn't pass any inspection today whatsoever,
From the safety perspective.
from a safety perspective, yeah.
Yeah, don't tell Sarah.
That's okay. There's some language I think that alludes to it. I don't wanna like dive down that.
Sure, I know, I know.
Cause it'll, well, no, I'm not, it's not that. I'm gonna be here all night. However, I think other people would like to not be here all night, like Matt.
Oh.
No,
Loving it.
he is. No, it's one of those, there is some language that I think like lends itself to that interpretation, but this is also something that other historic, not district, other historic commissions have also struggled with, where. So this historic building is in a flood zone, how do I make that habitable and yet still maintain, like, how can you preserve the building? Well, that's what they did. Or they moved all the electrical outlets up to like a foot from the ceiling in order to like keep the house where it was, because they want to keep the visual, like there's. Thankfully not flood zone. That's the
Yeah.
south. But
But I think that's an important thing to think about though, is that's a big one with the fire and stuff for our windows, but what's our.
updated, safe to the point, updated, the most current. Safety regulations as far as construction and renovation are concerned, I think don't lend themselves well to what was built in the 1850s.
I was gonna say, these houses have to be grandfathered in for certain things, otherwise. I don't think any of them live in any of the houses.
Yeah, because they'd be condemned.
They'd be condemned, yeah, 100%, like, and then in
Not
order to change
residential.
the code, you guys would be like.
But should that be something in there though for emergency provision? Say I wanna buy this beautiful house next door to me, but I got 5 kids. I can't open any windows. I say, well, can I come and replace these replace the windows, but windows that I can open are a safety issue? Would that be considered into the paperwork hardship, but.
Yes, currently, well, yes, possibly. I mean, currently, the way this would be structured is, I'm gonna borrow something that Rick said earlier. You can, or actually, you can rebuild the window completely to match. That is your guaranteed your most expensive option, and then it will work. Cause it's a new window that is exactly a reconstruction of, if you'd like, of what you had there already. Within our purview, it has to do with, yes, we can apply the economic hardship clauses. Or we can allow the flexibility on, well, put the windows on the side or the back, if that's the way your children need to jump out the window, jump out as opposed to the front. But again, it's not, none of this is a great answer, but that's what we have right now, that is the tools in our
I have a
toolbox.
question on that, said visible from the street.
I know.
Where?
Which
like,
street?
no, exactly, like, where does that?
What time of year?
And most, other than, let's say, all right, you have to be on that street. But you're gonna see 3 signs.
I got it as seen by Helen Keller.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So we-
Shame on me.
We'll identify the building. So we had a building that came before the commission for windows, which is in downtown and is very distinctive. And we had a very we deliberated on that one for quite a while, like, okay, you can do this with the front. And this is a side street, but it's kind of visible, so you can do this here, and the back, whatever you need to do.
Yeah,
Like, we had to do it, we took it side by side, because it was like,
window by window.
but essentially, yes, we've done that more than once. That's the limitations of the code as it stands right now, like, we are supposed to we are charged, I should say supposed to, we are charged with preserving that historic image, like what you do inside the house. As long as it doesn't compromise the structural integrity of the front, you're more or less, you have carte blanche for that.
Problem might come when you might have just a couple of windows out of 25 windows. Now you gotta do all 25.
At that point, it's probably cheaper to rebuild them to match the old one, if you're doing it one at a time.
You're right about that.
Anyway,
Okay.
sorry, we digressed a little bit, but it was reasonable, good conversation. I don't blame you, it's good. The conversation is good.
Well, I think there ought to be something that's in there, and it's certainly not anything that we've dealt with previously, and you guys have at least thought about it. Is I think there ought to be something that addresses safety concerns.
I would hate for something to happen to a child. in a
Fire,
historic
yeah, to
home.
be like, wish we had.
And
done
it's be like,
something.
oh, well, sorry,
Now we're gonna.
they lost it in the 1800s too.
And
Didn't live that long in 1800s. What are you worried about?
Yeah, ripe old age, live to the ripe old age.
That's why they had 20.
That's totally,
It's fine.
yeah, that sounds
I
great.
wrote that down.
Thanks, Dan. Clarifying to replace, no, I already talked about that, sorry. Removal of awnings, making it a minor revision. So it's taking an awning off of a historical building.
Yeah.
This is more of a downtown waterfront
Yeah, right.
version.
100.
Had this come up a fair bit? I can't remember.
It's come up
Remember, Anya, did we have something?
twice.
There was a
Yeah.
recent project for that, and I think it had to go to the commission.
Okay,
We didn't, the awnings were part of the conversation. I have no objections to it being a minor revision, but I would like the entire commission to have that conversation.
okay,
Before we make it one, like they should all have a chance to weigh in.
okay,
I'd be curious Mike's take on it too. I
Yeah.
just don't.
yeah,
We've already talked about this, but I think we can officially reiterate it, including illustrations in the code,
Yeah.
possibly seek grant funding for this to make the code easier to understand for lay people. Anybody object to that, or do we want to not do that? I feel like that's what we've been talking about.
Sounds good. We might vote again, just
Yeah.
see some examples before. it.
I'll send the example to Andy to consider.
So then we had, should there be stop work order powers from historic violations?
because right now, it's, sort of
I don't have that now.
you can do a notice of violation at the end of the, when they're done. But there's nothing that allows the code office to do a stop work order in the language.
Well, as far as their code is, they can only do a stop work order if it's a actual code issue. Is it an unsafe practice?
Well, they can do stop work orders on land development permits. That are, like
Yes.
site plans that
Right.
aren't necessarily building code,
Yeah. Okay.
because that's explicit in the land development permit,
Mhm.
but it's not explicit here.
So maybe we should hear from the code officer about this,
Yeah.
and what would be helpful for them.
It's probably something that should have a conversation and a formal one about.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Cause if we're going to be, if. We said it, HPC police, like, how are we going to? The people who would identify if there is a violation or if the stop order is either gonna be code enforcement or,
It wouldn't be us, it'd
Yeah.
be code officer.
that's a, like, I
Yeah.
don't mind talking about it, but I don't.
Will be a change to our guidelines that would
Oh.
indicate the code officer would have some jurisdiction.
I think give them the right. to do such a
The only thing I would add to that. Cause
I know,
clearly Steve is an example of, okay, could there have been a stop work order? Leaving that aside, if we're gonna get into that type of enforcement. The other issue, and just drive up and down Hayward Avenue, Pond Street, several buildings on Broadway. If we're gonna stop people from making changes that. Or proceeding with work without a certificate of appropriateness. What about the houses that are just being left to rot?
so,
Because I don't think you should have one without the other.
I disagree. Again, I would think it's worth talking about this. I did not specifically bring up Mr. Farren because it was a very long process for that certificate of appropriateness, and I feel that if you had the financial information at the first meeting we were at, you probably wouldn't have had that whole process. And I don't think you would have had to have been in the situation that you were in the first place. That's my feeling. I can't speak for how the rest of the commission would have voted, but that is, I've worked with them for several years now, and that's how I think it would have gone. Can't change the past, is what it is. But I guess in context of this, I don't consider you to be a prime example of someone where a stop work order would have happened. Because I think if we had,
Well, I was told that this committee did request a stop work order on my property. I tell you what I was told. I don't.
I mean, I can't speak what
You know
you're told,
I-
like-
I may have misspoken, you may not have been this committee, it may have been another, no, not code. Code issued me the violation, code called me before any work had gone on to say, what are you doing? I said, yeah, I'm putting the roof on because it's leaking everywhere.
Yep.
And so I said to them, I said, and I asked code, I said, are you gonna issue a stop work order? They said, no, we are not allowed to issue a stop work order on a roof. So I don't think that this committee should then be able to supersede if code can't issue a stop work order, like the example you gave, where they're allowed to issue a stop work order. That should be, but I don't think this committee should then be able to say, well, we want it that if you're doing something that your neighbor who isn't in a
No,
historic
the
district can't
committee
get a stop work
doesn't
order.
have enforcement capability.
Right, no, I think it was
Powers
just the way
code
it's,
office.
yeah. And I think their powers should be the same as they would be for a non-historic home, that it stays, that if it's like a roof, they can't put a stop work order.
so
That's,
my,
That's how I-
my understanding of this specific line is that it's a change in the historic preservation code, so the code enforcement officer can do
Right.
this. You can issue the stop work, like that's still not us, like we're not,
Right. The reason why you didn't
enforcement.
get a stop work order wasn't because it was a roof, it was because there was no empowerment in the historic preservation. Language.
whatever the reason was, that's why I didn't bring it up.
Yeah,
If that things had been different on that first one, I don't think we ever would have been
right.
down the road we unfortunately had to go down to get to where we got to. Regardless, I still think it's worth talking about.
Get some information,
Especially
to
with
code
the
officer and
Yeah.
learn more about the issue.
Because the question is, should we change the code to do that?
Right.
We don't do that now, but
Well, I think to Anne's point about land development, I mean, I'm the only archaeologist here, but I think that there's gotta be some reasons where we might have some validity to say, some code, to say, hey, there's concentration of objects here, and this is potentially a site. We need this to be looked at, we have to put a stop work order in place, we have that in my agency. We're building something, find a concentration of artifacts, it's an immediate stop work, we find human remains, it's an immediate stop work, and we move.
Yeah.
We have a whole process we have to follow, I mean, I'm assuming city of Bangor would have something similar, someone's putting in a new structure near a historic district, there's an unmarked grave, if you find it. You probably have a process to deal with that,
Right.
but do they have that if they find significant concentration of projectile points? Or, you find that greasy dirt, which you never wanna find, but you do, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm less worried about the historic structures component of the stop work. For me, I'm more concerned about the land development, ground disturbance, concerns. Again, if it's all on fill, whatever, big deal. But when you're getting into the non-fill, if you're going deep, and you're getting into that sterile soil or whatever, that's where I get more.
I think that.
we don't issue stop work orders, so it's not something that's code
I just assume
enforcement,
they add.
it's their enforcement. Anyway. The last item on the list is possibly change the certificate of appropriateness requirements for 3 members voting and only majority, not 4 positive votes as required now. 2 different pieces there, and we're not changing quorum,
No,
okay,
you're just changing the number it needs for,
just needs a simple majority as
Yeah,
opposed to
simple
a
majority.
majority.
Oh, okay.
I guess I always just presumed that was a federal requirement.
I don't believe so, but I will double check. I don't think that's in the,
Is it in our rules of order that we?
It's not.
it's in your code, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anya, do you know the origin of that?
The origin of, which part exactly?
The 4 positive votes being required for certificate of appropriateness versus a simple majority.
I don't know why it was like that.
Just
This would probably be a good question for the Maine State Preservation Office.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sure, we can talk about that. That was all for the city one.
Yep.
Rick, as the representative of the Broadway Historic District, HOA. I know. Trying to light it up, guys. Did you want to speak to any of the specific language that you had
I
suggested?
think,
If we're gonna talk about it.
first of all, on the evaluation standards generally, I think we've covered them in terms of the hardship. We've got basically the same language as about 1.5. We're not married to that, but I think there ought to be something that says that deals with the economic feasibility. That's says something more than economic feasibility, that has some kind of standard associated with it. And then we've also proposed taking out the language that says that, the plight of the owner is due to exceptional or unique circumstances and not the general applicability of this chapter, because quite honestly, what causes the hardship is the applicability of this chapter. If the chapter is rewritten to provide greater flexibility in terms of materials and so forth, then that language can stay in, but the problems that cause the hardship to begin with is the applicability of the chapter. Not because Steve's roof is more unique than my roof or
Right.
Peter's roof.
I interpret the language, and I hear what you say, I interpret the language under the exceptional circumstances clause here, that it's circular slightly, but I think it's just the legalese of the plight of the owner is due to exceptional and unique circumstances and not the general applicability of this chapter. I can see the circularity in what they're saying there. I can't speak to whether it's required or not. That would require a legal opinion. It's definitely legalese, but
It would be
I think I
great
understand.
if that language could have a clearer meaning.
Yeah.
It's very confusing what that means.
I mean, I understand, section C under there because it's the same general language that you have when the Board of Appeals is dealing with variances. I get that, but B has never made any great amount of sense to me.
Laura would rewrite it anyway. Okay. Rick, I did want to specifically say that whoever included this, I know we've talked about it, but one of the recommendations that you did have for a code review was, well, under, I'm just gonna read it. The use of substitute materials previously approved by the commission shall be deemed to satisfy the requirements of this chapter. That and the code enforcement officer, the planning office shall maintain a list of products previously approved by the commission and shall make that list easily available to the public and shall post that list on the city's website. While I'm not going to get into whether all that language is specifically necessary, I think that echoes something what we've been talking about all evening anyway, and that is a good specific recommendation to supply the information that we seem to all be in agreement should be available. So we're not doing a vote on anything today, but like, I did like I'm like, oh, good, that addresses concerns that I think we already had.
I don't really want to mention having an exception to my proposed language. Our proposed language
Not voting anything
for,
today, so.
for screw down metal road, but that one I don't understand, but.
Give everybody a chance to have a final say before we close this. Anya, would you like to speak first, since you're my one remote person?
I don't have any other comments at this point, so.
Thank you. I'll just go from the screen.
I would like very much at some point in this process, before you folks are considering specific language, if some of that language could be shared with us so that then we can come in prepared to either endorse it or make suggestions or voice our objections or whatever.
And you have a sense about how that process would work best.
I mean, the packets go out typically the Thursday before a meeting, and we're often finalizing packet on Wednesday before a meeting. So, I mean, but we'll do our best to get it to you as early as possible.
meeting.
So
Our
you
project-
would
our
see
biggest
the
specific-
staff language at the same time
But we do.
that we get it.
But I get that and I appreciate that. If the work is done prior to that,
Keep you in the loop.
it would be helpful because then we've got to coordinate, get everybody together.
I think
Yeah.
it
You guys have planned meetings. We don't, so we know there's something to meet about.
I mean, if you have comments just from all of the conversation from today that you wanna add, you know, definitely send those along, but yeah.
No, I get that, but what I'd like to be able to comment on is whatever language staff is proposing. And it's kind of hard sometimes to do that in the heat of the moment when we're reading it at the meeting.
Understood. I would, I guess, state. While we are just starting this process of reviewing our code, the historic preservation commissions and cities that have gone through this is not a quick process. It will not be fast because it does have to be public and there will be lots of conversation debate on it because everybody does have to have their piece on it. Ultimately, City of Bangor Historical Preservation Commission is supposed to represent people in the city of Bangor, just like our elected officials are supposed to represent the city of Bangor, like, it'll take a while. This is a good start, I feel.
It's great.
And did you have anything you
Yeah,
want?
no, that sounds good, yeah, we'll do another layer of work on this and, I don't know if it'll be at your November meeting, but it'll be probably December.
I'll show up as the public, that's fine,
When do you when's your last?
December, unless we have other meetings.
I think this has been really productive, from where it was in July and August to where we are today to have this dialogue is really important, and I think that. That comes from where maybe this all is born out of a perceived lack of transparency, perceived inconsistencies. And I think the biggest thing on the agenda should be outreach. As if you, the more people in the community you can have contact with, you have to understand change in language, we're trying to improve the times, yet we have to have some subjectivity to what you do in order to be able to maintain a certain level. People understand that and understand how that applies to them by talking to people in the public. I think that's should be a huge priority. I think it's been a really productive exercise.
It's important to maintain our ability to be flexible without appearing to be arbitrary.
I think the more people you have contact with, the more that would be understood.
Yeah, I agree, it's important. Rick started going down this path a little bit and I don't know what we can do about it. I don't think anybody can do anything about it. But when I used to walk the dog, there's some beautiful historic homes in the neighborhood. And I just hate seeing squirrels going through the soffits and into their attics. And I know we can't do anything about it, but. And pigeons. And, you know, I'm really trying to take care of what I have, and it's a lot of work, but we're doing it. I can show you pictures, but how do we entice people to get excited about their home? And I know some of them aren't even in the state, they might be out of state. It's just drives me crazy, and so maybe this whole thing on the districting and might get more people to get excited about
Community.
their historic
Yeah.
nature. And hopefully that'll like light a candle on the road, I don't know, but that just drives me crazy. I know, short drive, but still.
Well, honestly, like you guys here right now being excited and wanting to engage is the first step in having all of that happen for your communities. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Always goes first.
that's true.
Hopefully not.
Probably out of my house.
I have a wooden house.
For this multi-million-dollar renovation,
Yeah.
that'd be worth more than I've ever seen
Yeah.
on the window.
And also.
If something gets on fire, the chair's going through the window. I'll fall on
So I think, I mean, as much as a lot of this is happening because of my situation, I think in a lot of ways now it was good for, not good for me, but it was good. I mean, I think it made it more that you guys were able to see that I'm not alone. There are other historic owners we're all in kind of the same situation. We don't just have money to throw away and that we're just trying to get by like everybody else, and that if my situation inspires real change that can, I think, in a sense, improve all of Bangor and improve the historic neighborhoods and keep their value where it should be, or it's, yeah, and preserve them also at the same time, but, you know, that I think that's a greater accomplishment than not, you know, and if I had to be the reason for it, well, great. You know, I accept it. That's it. I'm excited for some change.
Member Brockie.
Oh, no, I was just mixing into it. Oh, Rose. I think we had a good discussion and a good start to things that honestly, a lot of us on this board have wanted for a while, but COVID did happen. And then it was a struggle to just kind of save your family, save your business, save whatever, you know what I mean? So like, this kind of got pushed aside,
Habits got
Because-
formed,
huh?
habits got formed where I think we stepped away from.
And to be fair, our jobs were easy and it is volunteer, like we had people that were like, hey, we wanna do this, and we're like, hey, that's great. You know, good job, like, I think that this is a good chance for us to take that extra step to talk to the public about things that we do wanna change.
The people that we represent.
But to be fair, though, it is super tricky sometimes, just like even this was tricky, you know what I mean? Like, everything has to be public, and we all have to dedicate our time to that, you know, so like, sometimes those are obstacles.
And does the council must have a committee on committees?
The committee.
They should really do some outreach to try to find an architect to serve on the HPC.
I know, but I miss that.
It's a really important skill set.
I mean, Mike's recommendations are great, but it's nice to have that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that we often have architects on the board.
One of the new members of our neighborhood is an architect, on Cedar Street, he used to do historical restorations in DC.
Bangor has volunteer commissions.
Yeah, I was gonna, we should get him to.
So there'll be a call for applicants this fall, and
They've had their
Like,
first week.
seriously?
That's all.
Oh, that's already-
They're doing another, they're supposed to be doing another one.
Was it Ian? Who was your neighbor that also came in as, was an architect, gave the example?
Oh, Mr. Reed, Robert Reed, yes. Yeah. He loves us down.
Matt, did you have anything you wanted?
I'm not thinking.
I'm coming back to LA. Listen, I'm supposed to end the meeting. Liam,
I'm all set. I'm happy that we got.
you've said your piece. Nate,
Alright. So, happy to do the outreach stuff. I'll volunteer myself for that because I love doing outreach. I just wanna make sure. I know I hammer this a lot. Archaeological sites, you know, historic preservation is more than just built structures, built objects, built environment. It's also the below ground environment. City of Bangor doesn't really have anything protecting. I mean, I see people metal detecting on city property all the time. It's an archaeologist, makes my eye twitch, but also they're harmless. But I would like us to be aware of that and evaluate that when we're doing things beside. It doesn't mean if they're gonna put on a roof that they need to have an archaeological survey. But I think we need to have something in place where, you know, we're taking that into account. We've got shipwrecks right there in the Penobscot River, that are Navy property that, God forbid, one of the cruise ships somehow damaged, right? We have a rich history from Native American occupation all the way through the historic period, 1975, going back 50 years. I don't know how many archaeological sites we have in Bangor. I didn't get that information from SHPO. I meant to do that, but I was lazy, sorry. But it's something I would like us to ensure that we protect. And then I would also recommend it as we're doing this city plan, as we're doing historic preservation stuff. Maybe we consider allowing the Penobscot Nations to provide some comment. You know, they were the original people that lived here. And I think it would do well for the city to just give them the opportunity, even if Chris Alcolex is here, even if he doesn't want to provide comment, just giving them the opportunity, I think would be great. And maybe even in future meeting, if we're trying to have some training, perhaps inviting them to come and just talk about Penobscot Nation culture, Wabanaki culture, whatever. I just think that would be extremely beneficial for us to do that. But yeah, so archaeological sites that report rocks.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done. Everything else was great about what we did.
That's great.
Allow me to summarize things and close them, as is my job. For those of you who are concerned about safety, I just want you to know you want section 148-10 maintenance. I'm not gonna read it because I don't know, but there is a code that does talk about safety. And also, as we refer to it, demolition by neglect.
It also deals with Carl's Point. But it doesn't enforce.
We don't enforce,
Yeah, that's true.
but yes. So. Okay. We have our code review that we discussed as far as staff recommendations are concerned. We discussed several camp report outs, and here's my last camp plug for the night. One of the things that a lot of historic preservation commissions are doing is historical sites that are culturally historically significant and trying to embrace like different cultures of the historical site. So like it aligns with what we were talking about. I just have to throw this in for Peter, even though he's not here today. We have talked a lot in past meetings about green spaces within historical districts, as they are not mentioned in our code. And then lastly, we did have a lot of conversation about an outreach role. If nothing else comes out of this, but an outreach role and a reminder for Rick when he needs to do more renovations, so he already knows what's going to be approved. Better than we were now. That being said, thank you everyone for your time, for staying with us this extra 6 minutes, and
For Jen, thank
meeting
you.
adjourned. Thank you, Anya.